My name is Joseph Daniel Ganci. You might know me as J. Dan Ganci, as a nom de plume. I'm the author of Gideon, The Sound and the Glory. It's an Old Testament epic novel. And a lot of people know the name Gideon, which is interesting. People name their children Gideon, and there's movies named Gideon, but there's nothing really about Gideon. There's a few people have written some things about it, but Gideon is kind of like a few highlights that people know. But Gideon, the story of Gideon is not even in Gideon's Bible. Isn't that surprising? Surprised me. The Gideon Society puts Bibles in hotel rooms. People go into the hotel and they're depressed, or they need some uplift, and you know the Bible always does that. There's a comfort in reading the scriptures, the Word of God. You know, it uplifts the spirit. And so they did that, but they used Psalms, Proverbs, and the New Testament. Gideon is not in Gideon's Bible. Gideon's in Judges 6, 7, and 8, and exactly 100 verses. So I took the 100 verses and turned it into a 384-page novel in 5 parts. I'm impressed. But God gave me discernment, and the access to Google gave me a well of information where I could put parts together, details. Isaiah talks about line upon line and precept upon precept, here a little, there a little. And he's specifically talking about revelations. That's how it works. You seek and you'll find, you search, you knock and it opens unto you. And the further down the rabbit hole you go, the more information you have to make connections. And that's how I did it. I like to think 1,000 years hence, the anthropologists will conclude as a society, they all commune with an all-knowing oracle named Google. It's an amazing tool that has never been known to humanity before. And that helps. That and discernment has helped me put all that together. So Gideon's stories in 5 parts. The last part is David. I got that, if you watched the previous video, the coming of Eli. Eli, great-great-grandson is Abiathar, who is the high priest under King David, the shepherd boy king. And so that made the connection with David. So I was able to go from Gideon's brothers as part 1, who are the sons of my mother. They were he told the Midian kings, I would have left you alive, but you killed the sons of my mother, even my brethren, at Tabor. And I'm going, at Tabor? Where did that come from? Okay, Google, Tabor, the Battle of Mount Tabor, Judges 4 and 5. The 900 chariots of iron, Deborah, the prophetess who lived under the palms, Barak, the 10,000, Sisera, the enemy captain, chariot captain, who Jael, the Canaanite woman, Heber's wife, puts a tent peg. I'm sure it was a metal tent peg because they were smithies. I don't imagine them using wooden tent pegs, but put a tent peg in his head while he was sleeping because she believed that Israel was led by God. And so all that, so the one word Tabor gave me my first 7 chapters. Gideon's brothers and the kings as princes were brought to that battle. Then Gideon, the story of Gideon himself. And then part 3 is Abimelech, their son that's half Canaan and half Israel. It was Gideon's love child. And his concubine's name is Druma. Josephus, the 1st century historian, had her name. It's the first time her name has been uttered in 2,000 years. And Druma's child and Gideon's child was Abimelech. And of course, being half Canaan and half Israel, he has 70 brothers or 69. It's kind of a little confusing. It's between 69 and 72 brothers, and he killed 70 of his brothers to become, I believe that were Congress of Judges, to become the first king of Canaan and Israel, who he's a nasty piece of work that ends a deserved death. And his followers, who are involved in all this destruction, their eyes don't open until he's dead. Isn't that interesting? Not until he's dead that their eyes open. After that, then there's Eli, the connection between Eli and Jotham, the only son that gets away, is at the right place at the right time. And then that gives me the tabernacle, the Ark of the Covenant, and all that. And that shifts over to David. And the story of David is just like writing a novel to David is like writing a novel to the Encyclopedia Britannica. You can't do David in one novel. There's no way. Samuel couldn't do him in one book. And, there's 1st and 2nd Samuel. And then David goes into Chronicles on top of that. So there's tons of information, especially when you go into detail with David. And one of the stories I wanted to tell, and where I excel, I like to think, in my biblical stories, are in some of the battles. I find them fascinating. And the Bible doesn't tell you too much usually about how the battle occurred. They tell you who was there and who won. And sometimes they give you some insights of some of the battles. But most of the time, they'll just tell you who won at the conclusion. Like Gideon's last battle, 300 starving men conquer 15,000 on a secure plateau. Starving men, I realized the only food they had was in the enemy camp. So if they didn't do anything, they were going to starve to death. So they conquered 15,000, really motivated. And all the Bible tells you about that story is it concluded before the sun came up. So it was a night battle. In the novel, I'll tell you how he does it. Is that how he really did it? God only knows. But if you could come up with a better way, have at it. I believe this is as good as I can make it as far as 300 starving men conquering. Okay, I diverged though. One of David's battles early on is the Battle of Keilah. Like he fought Goliath in the valley of Elah, and he has a battle in the Keilah is a secure fortress in Judea. And David is in the cave of Adullam, and he's depressed. Saul is after him and getting close. His friend Achish was a Philistine prince. He cast him out. He couldn't be connected with him, so at this point he had to cast him out. He had nobody. And of course, if you ever been in a position where you have nobody, you always have one person, you always have somebody you could call on, and that's God. God is always there. And then at the lowest ebb, if you've ever been there, calls on God. There's no atheists in foxholes when the world seems to be crushing down around your ears. And here's in a cave. He's down deep in a cave and crying out to God. And it's a poignant prayer. And what happens after his prayer, he turns his mind to someone he can help. He's worried about his parents, and he's worried about his brothers and how he can protect them, because he's afraid Saul is going to use them as a lever to get to him. So he wants to go protect them, and he gets them. I think they're in Moab at the time, because Ruth, his grandmother, was a Moabite. So there was a family connection with the all-seeing eye of the king of Moab. So they accepted them, but there's another conflict there, but that's another story. His brothers come, and 3 of his brothers, I believe, and then his parents come. And not only that, after that, 400 men, they're called debtors, malcontents, and misfits. 400 of them flock to David. They just seem to come. They're drawn to him. They somehow found out where he was, and they came they came to find him. So now he's got an army of 400 renegades, 400 misfits. This is David's army. And the Lord calls on David and says, David, Keilah is being sieged by the Philistines. And I want you and your army to go save them. So David tells his men that he was called upon God for him and them to go rescue the citadel of Keilah from a Philistine regular army. And his men are going, excuse me, David, but there must be some problem with this. Are you sure God said this? Take a look at us. We barely have weapons. You expect us to go against a trained Philistine army? Why don't you ask him again? I'm sure you misunderstood what he was saying. And David does that. He asks God the second time. God is a man of an entity of very small words, but he says, put me to remembrance. So he's asking you to negotiate. He's put me to remembrance. So David calls on him again, and God says, no, this is what I need you and your men to do. Trust me. Go relieve the siege. And Keilah's at a very critical place because the Philistines get in there and opens up the rest of Judea. So it's a critical stronghold. That's why the Philistines are there. So back then, to conquer a citadel like that, a secure fortress, and it's sort of like high walls and iron bars. So they're indicating that these iron bars, this is a strong fortress. You can't get in. They have no siege weapons. And the way you would siege a place like that, a citadel like that, would be starvation. You would cut off any food coming into that place, and eventually you're going to starve them out. Because disease, all of that is going to come into play. And the Philistines do something a little tricky. They bring cattle with them. So here you got the starving people in Keilah, and they're roasting cattle. That barbecue is wafting over the walls to these starving inhabitants. And they're just waiting them out. They're just encircled, just waiting, right? And they have plenty of food. They got barbecue. They're content. We'll wait them out. We're in no rush. So David comes with his men, and he's trying to figure out how he can attack this situation. A ragtag army of misfits with practically no weapons against the Philistines. And he goes out at night, and he was kind of a night guy, the shepherd boy under the stars. That's where he'd make his connection with God and creation. And so at night, he was real comfortable at night. One of the aspects is like when he sees Bathsheba up on the roof, he's just getting up from his nap at sundown. Now, who gets up from a nap at sundown? A night owl. So he goes out with his brothers and taking a look. He's going to see what he can find, any a defense posture, an attack posture, something. He's going to go take a look. He's going to, what's the word? He's going to investigate. And he's out there, and he's looking around, and he finally, it comes to him. He gets a moment of revelation, and he brings his brother back. They're about a mile down, and his men are away from there, and he's got the answer, and he wants to tell everybody. He says, what we're going to do is we're going to use the cattle against the Philistines. And so they'll listen, and they go, the cattle? Yes, we're going to, at night, we'll send in an arrow over the wall and let the people of Keilah know what we're going to do. And we're going to get behind the cattle, and we're going to stampede the cattle with clanging swords and fire. We're going to light a fire behind the cattle and stampede the cattle into the sleeping tents of the Philistines. And as the cattle is running in, Keilah can open up their gate, their army could come out, and as the weapons become available, you can pick the Philistine weapons up and will destroy the enemy. And his people are just amazed. Wow, that's amazing. Now, the Bible doesn't say how the battle got, but we knew the Philistines were there and the cattle were there. And then David wins. But the rest of it, the details are not there. So I'm real confident he used the cattle. Usually, the Bible will give you clues to what's already there. What's there in the environment to make that battle happen. So it was kind of exciting for me to put that together. It's a rousing battle. Even after the battle, he calls on God. He puts his ephod on. It's got the breastplate of judgment on. It's a linen ephod that he got from Abiathar, as a matter of fact. And he calls on God, and he asks God, if Saul's coming down, will they give me up? Will the people of Keilah that I just rescued, will they give me up? Will Saul come and will they give me up? And he says, yes, Saul's coming, and yes, they will give you up. So that was David had to leave, although he picked up another 200 of the wayward folks, another 200 men with issues to join his army. So he's got an army of 600 misfits, and this is David's army. And then, of course, the story continues from there. So thank you so much for listening. I hope this was enjoyable. The name of the novel is Gideon, The Sound and the Glory. It's on Amazon. There's a audio, soft cover, hardcover, and a Kindle download. The audio is interesting. I found the fellow on it was ACX. It's a part of Amazon Audio, and you look for someone to narrate. They want me to do it, but I don't speak Hebrew, so I thought this would be better. And I found a guy that was speaking Hebrew poetry. I didn't even know there was such a critter. And then he was teaching Italian on another demo and then speaking English without an accent. So in the audio, all the Hebrew places and all the Hebrew names are recited in Sephardic Hebrew. So the ways that you would not have imagined the way it's supposed to be pronounced, he pronounces that way, which is, I think it was a godsend for me. So, and then I have a friend of mine read my novel, and he goes, well, what happens next? And I wasn't sure where to go with that. And of course, the next would be David. So I've just completed the sequel novel. It's called David, God's Chosen Crucible. But you can't do David in one novel, like I said. So, and then I'm working on the follow-up sequel, which will be Second David, Trials and Tribulations. So this is exciting for me. I hope this will help in your understanding. Remember, everything speaks of the coming of Christ. And most of the time, Jesus was called Son of David. So David gives you an insight into the working of God's mind. So thank you for your time. I hope this was entertaining and you found an interest in the Old Testament stories. Shalom, God bless, and be careful.